to ask Vice Chair Audrey Edmondson to please lead us in the pledge. Thank you very much. Welcome back, everybody. I know we were away for a month, but we're here and ready to go. Maria Luisa, could you please call roll call?
Yes, ma'am. Mayor Jimenez. Here. Ms. Gutierrez. Here. Mr. Martinez. Here. Mr. Meyer.
Present.
Mr. Walters.
Here.
Treasurer Board.
Here.
Secretary Wolf.
Here.
Vice Chair Edmondson. Here. Chair Fano.
Here.
We have a full quorum.
Thank you very much, Maria Luisa. Because Mr. Zaldivar is in court representing us, I'd like to ask Ms. Stillman, who will be our board counsel, if there are any additions, deletions to today's agenda.
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you.
Thank you.
We do have in your blue folders, everyone should have gotten the revised agenda. It's revised 7C is the new agenda item for that.
Anybody have that in their package?
At this time, Madam Chair, I'd like to give the members an opportunity to declare any voting conflicts that they might have with the agenda. Okay. Conflicts with any item on the agenda? That's it. At this time, we have citizen comments. I don't know if we have any comments. Can you please state your name and address for the record, please, and your company name?
Speak about the item agenda you're referring to.
I will. Thank you.
Thank
My
you.
name is Daniel Halley. My address is 8620 Southwest 48th Street in Miami, Florida. I am the president of Halley Engineering Contractors, and I'm speaking in specific to the Gratigny Parkway project, 18-01. I'm not sure where it is on your agenda. Specifically, we were a bidder on the 18-01 project. We addressed the committee considering award about a week or last week. Specifically, that committee and staff recommended that Halley Engineering Contractors be disqualified for an alleged cone of silence violation for submitting a reference that was signed by a subconsultant to one of Miami-Dade Expressway Authority's general engineering consultants. The committee they determined that this subconsultant was considered as part of an MDX representative. And what I'm asking this board today is to reconsider that disqualification. What we submitted, and let me give you some history. As far as this reference goes, we submitted our references to numerous people to try and obtain references for this procurement, which was a low bid procurement, had no qualifications based as far as scoring. When we submitted, we sent it, and if someone had a conflict, in fact someone did when we originally sent it, they responded back to us, we have a conflict, we cannot provide you with the reference. Understood. We went to the next person. The next person on this particular job was a project engineer. This project engineer wrote back to us, I can provide you the reference. He did so, and we submitted the reference accordingly. Now, we weren't under any impression this person was in violation or part of what the MDX umbrella would consider to be part of the cone of silence umbrella. Now, when we come to find out that MDX staff is considering that this person is under this MDX cone of silence umbrella, which led to where I am today, the disqualification. Specifically, what I'm just asking this board to consider is the actual four corners of what we bid, the ITB, the reference RFP. There's three definitions for MDX representative as part of this ITB. Of the three definitions, of which they're hard definitions, subconsultant is not part of any of those definitions. okay? I'd ask the board to look and ask legal, is subconsultant really part of any of these definitions? Okay? I would challenge that it's not. What is, ironically enough, is an MDX contractor, would fall under the cone of silence. Myself, or my company, has a contract with the Miami-Dade Expressway Authority active. Would we, as an MDX contractor, be in violation of the cone of silence if someone requested a bid from us and we provided them a quote? And that's what I'm trying to get to. I don't believe it should be, but that's the way that this contract language is being written.
Mr. Haley.
Your 3 minutes are up.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Please state your name, your address, and the item you're referring to.
Good afternoon. My name is Mauricio Gonzalez, address 1077 Southwest 60th Avenue, Miami, Florida, 33156, and I'm here to talk about item 7C. I'm the president and owner of Lead Engineering Contractors, and I'm here before you to respectfully request the award of the MDX contract ITV 1801 Gratigny Parkway to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder, Lead Engineering Contractors. This is consistent with MDX's original staff recommendation and as endorsed by last week's Joint MDX Committee, the Awards Committee, pending review and bid analysis. A letter from Lead with backup documentation has been distributed to the board. Lead is one of the two bidders that complied with Part 1 of the ITV. Weekly Asphalt Paving was the other one. The other four bidders were non-responsive or disqualified because they simply did not follow the rules clearly established in the ITV. Under Section 2.42 of the MDX procurement policy, determination of non-responsiveness are final. To change the rules now, after the project was advertised and bid, would be wrong. This contract should be awarded to Lead for the following reasons. One, Lead followed the procurement rules established and advertised by MDX. While some of our competitors may now conveniently claim that their prices may have been lower than Lead and Weekly's price proposal, this is not only highly unlikely and suspect, but irrelevant, since their bids were deemed non-responsive or rejected as disqualified. Rebidding the project would place Lead and Weekly at a significant competitive disadvantage. Our competitors know original prices, but we will never know their prices in a rebid situation. Rebidding clearly would punish those that follow the MDX rules. Number two, the bid amount submitted by Lead is a competitive price. The original ITV allowed a contract time of 365 days and $2.4 million in engineer's estimate. Addendum number 1 reduced the contract time to 240 days, a reduction of 34% in the allowable contract time, but the engineer's estimate was never increased as it should and remained at $2.4 million. There was no ceiling price or GMP on this procurement. Lead's price was within 2% of the second bidder, Weekly Asphalt. And when Lead ran a comparison using FDOT statewide averages and plugged it into this bid proposal. The result was that our price proposal to MDX would be within 2.1% of an equivalent bid with FDOT statewide averages. Lead's price is competitive. Number 3, rebidding will not guarantee MDX a lower bid price, but it will guarantee MDX a delay in the program and additional costs in rebidding the process. They're both tangible, 6 to 8 months delay with staff and consultant costs, and intangible. It's clear that getting the work done sooner would prevent accidents and/or fatalities. See, some competitors think that if they don't win, then the system must be wrong, the procurement process must be flawed. So why don't change it? Let's rebid. And this is what they're asking this board to do. Please don't let them get away with it. Thank you.
By Mr. Gonzalez.
Good afternoon.
afternoon.
Speaking on item agenda 7B. My name is Fernando Sanchez. My address 4166 Sapphire Terrace in Weston, Florida, 33331. And I'm here to request that the MDX contract ITV 18-01 be awarded to Lead Engineering Contractors by the MDX board. Lead followed the procurement rules established by the MDX. LEED provided the most competitive price between the two bidders that were found compliant with Part 1 of the solicitation process. That makes LEED the lowest responsible and responsive bidder. Articles 1.2 and 20.2 of the ITB state that the responsible bidder that has the lowest total bid amount will be awarded the contract. Also contractually, there was no GMP or a not-to-exceed price on this ITB. The other four bidders were determined by the awards committee to be either non-responsive or disqualified. Rebidding clearly will punish those that follow the rules and follow the procedures of the MDX. If the boards agree to rebid this project, the message this board will be sending to our industry and our community, it will be the wrong message. LEED provided a competitive price to the MDX on this project. LEED's proposal for this ITV is within 2.1% when compared to FDOT's statewide average. And again, when we compare our price proposal to weekly asphalt, the difference is only 2%. There will be additional cost and time if the project is rebid, both tangible and intangible. But more important, getting the work sooner may prevent accidents and fatalities along the project corridor. Thank you.
For your time, Mr. Sanchez.
Are there any more citizen comments? I think that's it, Madam Chair.
And we can close the citizens' comments. Thank you all for taking the time to speak with us.
Now we'll have the approval of the summary minutes from the board meeting of August 29th.
I would like a motion for approval. We've got a first and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Passed unanimously. Thank you very much. Mr. Executive Director,
Madam Chair.
turn it over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and welcome back, board members. It's been a while since we've met. A lot of issues. The first thing I'd like to address is Hurricane Irma. As many of you already know, the MDX system sustained very minor damage. In fact, the majority of the damage happened to this boardroom, and hence we couldn't have our board meeting last month. During the hurricane, tolls were lifted for 15 days at a cost to MDX of $9 million, and I know that the treasurer and the CFO will address that during the treasurer's report. I want to thank the state, FDOT, and the county at Emergency Management for working with us at MDX to ensure that all of our highways were open for the recovery effort immediately after. And I know a lot of the staff was out there, and I know the chairwoman is going to address that later as well. But I wanted to make sure that everybody knew that we work collaboratively with a plan that is put in place way in advance. So just wanted to make that. As far as projects, I want to address a few of the projects. 87410, extension of 874, we're continuing with that construction. A lot of the construction activity is focused on Southwest 128th Street. 83628 and 29, which is the major work that is on State Road 836 right now. Major traffic shifts took place during the last 60 days. Primarily, the exit ramp now going to Lejeune Road north and southbound exits at 37th Avenue. The shift happened very smoothly. As everybody can see, we're demolishing and taking apart the ramps at Lejeune Road. That is our critical path. The next one I wanted to discuss is State Road 836 Southwest Extension. On October 30th, next Monday, at 6:30, at Archbishop Coleman Carroll High School, MDX will be hosting an alternatives workshop for the extension of 836 South and West. We invite the community to go to the meeting. We expect a very large turnout on a project that has had a lot of support by the community. It will provide relief. That will be happening on Monday, October 30th. On Tuesday, October 31st, the county will submit the application for amendment to the CDMP for the same project. So this project and these processes, NEPA and the CDMP, will be following a concurrent path to its conclusion. Later this year, this fiscal year, and I know our CFO has already had these discussions with traffic and revenue consultants, we will be coming to the board on a plan for how to finance that project. There will be various options from how to toll it, how to finance the structure of financing, look at our current policy, recommend any options to the board for financing of a project of that magnitude. So you will be seeing that in the next 2 to 3 months, probably in the January, February timeframe, you will be seeing some preliminary numbers. As far as the 83611 I-395 project, the latest information that I have on that project is that there was no settlement reached by the department and the teams, and that the project was referred to the Division of Administrative Hearings on October 20th of this year. So I guess the next step is to wait to when that hearing takes place and see what the outcome is. On the Dolphin Park and Ride, construction was able to resume after Irma. We have been looking and working with county staff, since we will be taking over the Dolphin Park and Ride, and discussing operational issues. I think we have all reached an agreement on how we will operate the facility. There are some other issues, such as how we will charge our patrons parking, that we will flush out through the RFP process. One of the things that we are contemplating is adding ramps to and from the extension of 836, the existing extension of 836, and taking advantage of the fact that we're in construction right now. In working with Florida's Turnpike Enterprise, we will also be advancing the package of construction for the ramps that connect 836 to the 836 extension. That was a project that the Turnpike was going to take the lead and build our portion of the project. We're flipping it. We're going to take the lead and build their portion of the project. So that'll be on an advance. That will be coming before this board for approval to advertise very soon. I do want to speak to the Consolidated Back Office, the CCSS. On Saturday, October 21st, Florida went live with what we call the United States Southeast Hub. In a nutshell, this is a partnership between Florida, all the Florida agencies, Turnpike Enterprise, MDX, Tampa, Hillsborough, Central Florida, North Carolina Turnpike Authority, and the Georgia State Road and Toll Authority. Bottom line is, if you drive with a SunPass, you can drive in Georgia and in North Carolina. It's interoperable, and vice versa. But the more significant portion of the hub is that now it allows this hub to communicate with other regions of the United States and have a nationally interoperable system. So there will be a press release. I know the state is putting something together and wants all of the agencies to be co-assignees to the press release. So as soon as I get it, I'll share it with the board members. Our next milestone on that project is to go live for all toll-by-plate transactions in a centralized back office. As we've stated from the day that we went, with the CCSS, if you are a toll customer in Florida, you will receive one bill, you'll make one phone call, you'll resolve all your issues in one centralized location. There will be a walk-up site here in Miami. It's off of the Palmetto and 25th Street, around 79th Avenue. There will be another walk-up center in Tampa, and they'll remain the one in Boca Raton. Again, it's about customer service. These last 60 days, there's been a lot of activity, primarily on staff's part, of trying to continue to work with the TPO in the county as we try to implement and move forward with the first phase of what we call the East-West Corridor. We got another board member. With the East-West Corridor, the TPO, and Madam Chair, if I may, I can address the TPO since we don't have a representative yet. The TPO has taken various actions in the last month and a half as to structure of a finance plan, assumptions that they want to make as far as which corridors are going to move forward. As far as the authority goes, MDX goes, we've made a commitment on the East-West. We're going to move forward with the East-West. We're going to put in the first phase of East-West. We hope to be able to develop so we can have a permanent solution in the inside median as we have constructed and extend it on the 836 Southwest. Commissioner Moss, or board member Moss at the TPO, brought up the issue that by doing the project and extending it southwest, we're actually taking care of two corridors. Not only the East-West Corridor, but we'd also be taking care of the Kendall Corridor. Because if you can create a loop around the extension and connect it back to the 874 extension, you've basically created a loop where you can locate various transit hubs. And I know we're working with the county and the TPO on locating those facilities throughout our community. More recently, and I'm sure you read it in the paper or saw it on the news, Congressman Diaz-Balart hosted a meeting with our transportation officials. I know that Mayor Jimenez and Harold Destoons, representing Secretary Wolf, attended the meeting with many of us. We spoke about how we're united and we've got the SMART plan moving forward. The Secretary didn't mince words. It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough to come up with the money. So she's looking for, it's nice that we're all together, but it's going to be difficult to come up with the money. She didn't leave any false expectations. I think that would be the way that I would summarize it, but she was extremely impressed that all of us were speaking from the same song sheet. I believe that's the way we spoke it. And with that, Madam Chair, I'll be happy to answer questions.
Any questions from the board members? Mr. Walters.
On the I-95, 395 project, that administrative hearing drags on, as they sometimes do. Is there any concern that we might lose the state funding that'll be directed somewhere else?
I don't know how to answer that question. I'm not the person that can answer that question. I'm sure the Secretary can.
Mr. Wolf, thank you.
Yes. It is very possible that if the administrative hearing shuts the project down, a decision will be made whether to reinitiate it or use the funds on a different project.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez.
Actually, on that, so that we don't leave it with a hanging chat, I guess. On that issue, Board Member Walters, if that is the way the state proceeds, remember that the MDX portion of the project from 17th Avenue to I-95 is funded by MDX. So we would have to figure out how to repackage it and put it out on the market again.
Mayor Jimenez, I apologize.
Thank you. Not so much as questions as comments. On your alternatives workshop public meeting, I think it would be very helpful if you had an analysis of what it would be, what it would take, how many parcels we would have to buy, how many people we would have to displace if the extension of the 836 were inside the UDB. I think that there are commissioners and TPO members that would be very interested in those figures, and also people in that will be at that particular workshop. The second comment is with Secretary Chow. Secretary Chow didn't mince words about the funding, possible federal funding for transit. The $1 trillion, so to speak, is really not $1 trillion. They may find $200 billion. When you divide 200 billion by 50, that means $4 billion. But here's the one thing that I took out of that, is that your project will be graded on its ability to leverage public-private partnerships. And so we also talked about the 13C component that we have, that any extensions of Metro Rail, et cetera, would have to be operated by our Transit Workers Union. In this point, that kind of doesn't put us in a good position to leverage public-private partnerships and get federal funding. So it was very frank. We also asked for, we're going to be applying for a $250 million small start grant, the ability to begin work with that as they view it or they analyze it. And if they analyze it and it comes out that it's a worthwhile project, that we can get our money back, because we want to really start working on the stations, et cetera, down on the South Dade Busway, and also we need to also start working on the north side. And I know that this is MDX, and we've stepped up to the plate and said that east-west is, and that component, we're gonna do it. And so the executive director planning something for a trip over to the Far East in January to see some stuff, okay, that is new and some old stuff, and see what it is that we can actually put on the 836 and other corridors, if we can get the funding, and also if we can move through the process. I know we're all united on the SMART plan conceptually. We might not be all united in terms of what's going to go there. So we need to find consensus on exactly what it is we want to put on these corridors. So thank you, ma'am. Thank you for letting me make those comments.
Thank you, Mayor Jimenez. Anyone else? Discussion, question? Thank you very much. Mr. Board, will you be providing the treasurer's report for us?
We'll start it.
Thank you.
Good afternoon to everybody. Thank you, Madam Chair. I think in your packages, everybody received the first quarter financial statements. In the first quarter financial statements, the largest deviation that we have is obviously the toll suspensions. And we see in the first budget for September, we see a shortfall of $6.4 million. And the executive director mentioned a figure that was larger than that, almost $9 million. The way that we go from $9 million to the $6.4 million accrued in September is that when the budget was made, the Finance Department created an allowance for hurricane events, for unforeseen events. And that allowance is for $3.2 million. So that's how we get to the $6.4 million deficit from the projected budget. Now, when you go into the cumulative of the first quarter of the year, we see that the variance goes from $6.4 million to $4.5 million. And that's where we find some good news. In the months of July and August, we had $1.8 million in excess revenue that mitigates a portion of the shortfall from the toll suspensions. In addition to that, we have another $1.5 million in other revenues that mitigates that amount further. So if we take pause for a second, we started with toll suspensions of about $9 million that will have an effect of about $3 million in the first quarter. We do anticipate that the increase in revenue from the budget, which in the months of July and August was about $900,000 a month, will continue, mitigating the toll suspension even further, although having consumed the allowance that we had in the budget. So let's hope the season ends and nothing further happens. And then as we go further on the expense side, we will find very minor modifications to the budget. Two additional items. We had, in the previous session, we had an open discussion regarding potentially some monthly rates or some caps or considerations to that effect. And talking to the Finance Department, I think the measured and the appropriate delivery of that data, which includes not only the analysis of the data, understanding what the revenue neutral caps might be, but also, because it would be great to have the discussion, but if the technical implementation of those fares, rates, credits, whatever we want to call them, do not happen easily or are not really attainable, I think it would be a very academic discussion. So I think the responsible thing to bring back to the board would be not only an update regarding the potential caps, but also whether it's attainable in terms of the delivery on the technical side for that. So in conversations with the Finance Department, I think January, February is a time frame that we have had a discussion about. And the last item, Marie, I'll defer to you. Could you explain to the board and to the public the delivery of the audited financial statements, where we sit with that?
Yes, sir. Thank you. It has been our custom in the past to present preliminary financial statements in September. And at that time, we do a presentation to the Budget and Finance Committee, and we do a recommendation on the cashback program, or the frequency rewards program. This year, we had the hurricane, so the meeting was deferred until October. We did present it last week to the committee. We went over the financial information, and we made the recommendation on the rewards program. The auditors will present their final report in November. They will present to the committee or to the board, and the report will be distributed sometime in November as well.
Thank you, Marie. And with that, Madam Chair, I conclude. If there are any questions, thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the board, please? Mayor.
No, why will it take so long in order to find out if the things that we talked about in terms of capping, et cetera, are technically feasible?
So I think that we received the preliminary report from the first big data analysis, and I think that, Marie, you were unsatisfied with, and I won't quote you, I would rather you speak for yourself.
We're looking at, the process is going to take a little bit longer than we thought. We engaged the traffic and revenue consultants, and they're looking at the outliers of the percentage of people that drive the system. But when we sat down and analyzed the data, some of their assumptions I felt were subjective. And before coming to this board and saying, we think the cap should be $75 or $100, and how many people are potentially going to register for a monthly pass, I think we need to make sure that we can substantiate those numbers. So that's number one, that we understood the numbers. They used their information based upon a 2014 study that was prior to closing the system. So what I asked him to do was to select several months from last fiscal year and take actual data, and it's millions and millions of transactions at different trips. So we asked him to recreate that and provide information based upon that most current data. And once we were able to look at the analysis, we want to present it to the committee, but we also want to look at from an operational perspective, can we do it? From a system perspective, can we do it? And from a legal perspective, are we able to do it as well? So we don't want to present a program and then say, it really looks great, but potentially we can't implement it.
Could I follow up on that? Okay. The technical capabilities of the system are known to you now, correct?
I don't think so, because currently, right now, we operate the lanes. Going forward, we potentially can ask the customer service back office to reconfigure on a transponder on someone's account that once they reach a certain number of transactions during the month, the rest will be charged at zero. So until the back office goes live, we can have that discussion with them.
How does the people of Key Biscayne, who are charged a monthly fee, the residents there are
I
charged a
can't
monthly?
speak to that, honestly, I don't know.
Well, maybe you need to talk to those folks, because they do that right now, okay? So it doesn't go on a transactional basis, it goes on a monthly pass, and the people that work there also have a separate kind of a pass, and they have different rates, and they're also capped too. So if you could talk to them now, I think they can answer those questions before you get back with the analysis. You already know the system's capable of doing it.
Will do, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Any other comments, questions? Ms. Gutierrez.
Thank you. I wanted to go back to the financial summary that we were given at OPS, and I wanted to ask Marie if she could give us a high-level snapshot of it, because I had some questions.
So last week, we presented the year-end financial for 2017. On a high-level perspective, the overall revenue was roughly around $242 million compared to the previous year, which was $238 million, or $3.9 million more than fiscal 16. And that included tolls, fees, investment income, and other revenue. On the expense side, we overall was $87 million, which included $35 million of depreciation and amortization. But the overall expenses for fiscal 17 was about $900,000 below the previous year. So all in all, I think that from a comparison perspective, we met our objectives, and we're pretty consistent to the prior year.
I got some follow-up questions. Referring back to the profit and loss that we were shown, there was some cash that was depicted. Is that hard cash, or is that paper money that's already committed?
So if I understand you, if I take the revenue less the expenses, that's not necessarily cash. That's net revenues, and there's some items included in there that are not cash in nature.
Right. So is that cash that we have available to us?
No, ma'am, it is not. We currently have about $300 million for the purpose of reserves to pay for the current work program and bond proceeds specifically.
One more question. So do we have all the money for the work program?
No, ma'am, we do not have all the money on hand for the entire work program.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, we'll move along. Ms. Shaver, thank you so very much. Thank you, Mr. Board. That was a great report. Everybody needs to mark their calendar for the frequent reward. We're going to go into that, but I'm plugging it.
Madam Chair, before we move to the regular agenda, I wanted to give a general counsel report to tell you I don't have much of a report. We're in the middle of litigation. As you may know, the ETC trial is ongoing, and that's where Carlos is, and he'll be there probably for a couple of weeks. But he will provide everyone with an update when he has good information to give you. We'll move on now to the regular agenda.
Thank you.
Okay.
Everybody okay with that? Thank you.
Item 7A, approval of the fiscal year 2017 payment for customers registered in the Frequent Driver Rewards Program, endorsed at the joint FPP and OECI Committee on October 19th.
Thank you, Ms. Tillman. Ms. Schaefer, can you please provide an overview of the frequent driver rewards program? I still want to say cashback, but I'm trying hard to get with the new title for the fiscal year of 2017.
Thank you. Just as some background, this program was implemented back in 2015. Initially, we had about 80,000 customers registered for the program. As of the end of fiscal year 17, we had 182,000 customers registered for the program. We had open enrollment January 2017 up until March 31st of 2017. We had a total of 80,000 customers that qualified for the program at an amount of $5.6 million in total. In essence, we are declaring a 22% back of tolls for each transponder that was paid to MDX. Part of the action item, we were requested by the chair to advance open enrollment for fiscal 18 starting December 1st of 2017, 30 days in advance. From a scheduling perspective, should this governing board approve the cashback rewards program, I apologize, our public communications department will make sure that they notify the public of the cash rewards program November and December, and checks should be mailed out to customers on December 1st.
Thank you very much. As everybody knows, this is such a near and dear component of what we do. I wanted to say thank you to Marie for what you also offered at the joint committee meeting, because you were very thorough and it was very useful for us. So thank you again. Thank you to staff. It's very nice to know that we can count on you to give us these wonderful updates. So I'm plugging it again. December 1st, mark your calendars, save the date. You should, if you signed up and you spent over $100, you'll be getting your check. And that's a good time for you to sign up for the next year, for 2018. Because this year we had 80,000 people. Next year, can we double that? Not so much, right? But we'd be happy to have an increase. Thank you.
Madam Chair, before you
Sir.
take action on this item, at the committee meeting, I think there was a question asked in the presentation. I think it's inside your packets. Towards the end of the fiscal overview, it talks about the rewards program, and it talks about the ineligible customers and the eligible customers. There was a question asked when we looked at everyone who signed up. About 31% of everyone who signed up did not spend $1 on the MDX system. That we looked at it. So based on that analysis, what we did is we sampled a number of transponders, send them up to the turnpike, and had them validate where those transactions were occurring, because maybe it's a mistake. And what we got back is that, no, these customers are spending toll dollars. They are on the turnpike, they are on 95, there's some on the Broad Causeway, Rickenbacker, but not on the MDX system. The other thing that we looked at from the eligible customers, and it goes back to the traffic analysis and the traffic and revenue analysis that was done in 2013. The original program that this was created, and many of the board members here who were back then, it was intended to address what we considered the 8% traffic that was going to do the full round trip on 836, which would see the most substantial increase of tolls. If you look at the eligible customers in this program and you look at the split of how they're spending their dollars, 8% are spending $1.92 or greater. The balance of that is spending less, and the overwhelming majority of our users, 82%, are spending less than $1.37 on average per day on the MDX system. The conclusion is what our traffic and revenue concluded in 2013. Our system, many people use it for short trips, and it is because of the amount of employment that has occurred towards the western portion of the county, in the Doral and the Medley area, so you're seeing reverse commutes that are shorter in nature. If you look at the highest percentage of trips, of those that were eligible, okay, this is a different universe that we're looking at. 62% spent between 40 cents and $1.37. 40 cents is a little bit more than one ramp gantry. It is half of what our mainline gantry is on 836. So when you think about it, you're seeing what people are doing, and That is why, board members, we want to validate the information for a prepaid program, because we might be doing something that will benefit a lot of folks, but it might be very costly, because what we're seeing is a lot of infrequent users on the MDX system.
Thank you. I'd like to ask for a motion to approve this item. Second. Thank you. Open for discussion. Any questions? Mayor Jimenez.
Yeah, I'm sorry to have so many questions, but you said 31% of the people that signed up for our program don't even use the system at all, okay? So they're using something else.
Right.
So what is the what is the most that somebody can actually pay on our system?
The most round trip on our system on 836 from end to end, it is $4.20 from the Turnpike to 95, and if they go on the extension, add 60 cents to that, so $4.80.
One way or two ways?
Round trip.
Round trip.
Round trip on 836. That's the most they'll spend on 836.
Okay. And so you stated something that 80% were spending less than $1.50?
Yes,
a day, round trip?
82% are spending less than round trip $1.37 average daily tolls. That isn't toll.
Less than, that's more than 80%?
$1.37 a day.
Okay. Why don't we let people know that?
I think that's the intent of going out early and doing the sign-up. And the reason it's a great idea is that the way we had it before, we'd send out the checks, we'd inform people, we'd do some public involvement, and then we would have a lapse of about a month until we did open enrollment, and you lose the momentum. I think when people start getting their checks and they start seeing what's going on and they tell their family and friends, you're more prone to go in and sign up immediately because you're going to benefit. And I think that's why we wanted to start at December 1st. But you're correct, we have a public communication strategy to go out and inform the public of what they're using and how they're using it.
Well,
It's not all on
that-
MDX.
The vast majority pay less than $1.50 on a round trip per day. So that's something that we really should be telling folks, okay? And I'd like to know what the average would be of people that use the Turnpike. That should be public information. So if you're solely on the Turnpike, well, how much do you pay? All right, because I think all this is, what's going on is somehow MDX is getting the blame for everything, and the Turnpike is skating, okay? And we're getting blamed for all the tolls, where in fact, you know, we're not even the majority of it. If you go on the I-95 Express at a certain time, you can pay up to 10 or even more dollars one way, okay? One way, out. So $1.50 is a pretty good bargain. If it's 80% of our people are doing less than $1.50, that's a pretty good bargain.
Yeah.
Okay?
That's one of my big things, is educating our
Yes.
drivers, that they know that they're not necessarily on MDX, they just automatically assume MDX. Mr. Board.
Signs on the Turnpike that says that this is not MDX? Have signs that you are on MDX, you are not on MDX, and have every quarter mile, this is not MDX, this is not MDX, okay?
I like
Right,
that one.
after every toll, okay?
A note of caution in that this is a small sample of our user base. This does not represent all of our user base. So this is what the people that have applied for a credit, that's what they reflect. So if you look at it from a revenue perspective, 80% of our revenues are not booked through here. So I'm not as comfortable as jumping to the conclusions that 80% of our users are actually paying less than $1.37 a day. So I think that it merits further data, further analysis, but from the sample that we have, those are the conclusions. But there's a large amount of revenue that isn't being analyzed, and that will be analyzed when we finish working through the larger data set. So that would just be...
I think just to follow up on that, I think it would be worthwhile having our traffic and revenue consultants at the next meeting so they can show you the distribution of the monthly users.
By the way, it might be that it is, but I just don't know that it is because of the 80%.
This is a pretty good representative. I would figure this would be a pretty good representative sample. If I were taking a poll, I think, you know, if you had 80,000 members, or that there would be pretty good representation. It may not be. Maybe maybe some folks that are paying a lot more aren't looking for the rebate. I would find that hard to believe, but you know, let's check it all out just to make sure. But I'd venture to guess is a pretty good number.
Any other discussion, questions? Okay, can we have a vote? All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous, right? Yes. December 1st, mark your calendar, December 1st. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item B, MDX procurement contract number RFQ 17-02, MDX work program numbers 30034.051, 40044.051, and 10021.051, construction, engineering, and inspection services for State Road 924, which is the Gratigny Parkway milling and resurfacing, drainage improvement and speed feedback signs, not to exceed $767,131. It was endorsed by the committee on October 19th, and the motion before this board is to approve the contract to award.
Is there a motion? Thank you. Thank you. We have a first and a second. Is there any discussion, questions? Seeing none, hearing none, we'll put this for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed unanimously. Thank you.
Item C, MDX procurement contract, ITB 18-01, MDX work program numbers 30034.060, 40044.060, and 10021.061, construction services for State Road 924, the Gratigny Expressway, milling and resurfacing, drainage improvements, and speed feedback signs. The motion before this board has been amended by staff, and staff is requesting the approval to reject all bids and re-advertise the project. That is the motion before the board.
Thank you, Ms. Dillon. We don't have a motion yet.
I'll move.
Secretary Wolf,
I'm sorry.
I was going to let Ms. Cordero go over it first. I know that you wanted to say something. Ms. Cordero, if you could please walk us through this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As mentioned, the motion before you is the approval of staff's recommendation to reject all bids and re-advertise the project, which is different than what was originally submitted in this package. We received 6 bid packages in response to an ITV released by the agency. 3 of those bid packages were deemed non-responsive by the I need to remember the new name, OECI committee, for not meeting the prerequisite requirements of the ITV. One of the proposals was also disqualified, as you heard Mr. Halley speak on it today, for disqualified for violation of the cone of silence. So general community and JVA were deemed non-responsive, and Halley Engineering was disqualified from the process. Those actions were already approved by the OECI committee at its meeting of October 19th. Subsequent to that approval, we went ahead and opened the compliant bid packages from Lead Engineering and Weekly Asphalt. Lead Engineering seemed to be the lowest, was the apparent lowest bidder with a bid of $2,998,577, but it was about 25% higher than the engineer's estimate. There was discussion at the committee, there was some reservations from the committee members about awarding a contract that was so high above our engineer's estimate. Staff asked the committee to allow us to go through bid analysis and review the bid packages before making a final recommendation to this board. The committee went ahead and moved forward the award of the contract pending such review and bid analysis of the bid package. Subsequent to that, staff did review the bid package from both compliant bidders, and they were both deemed responsive. The general engineering consultant did do a bid analysis and found that the lowest bidder is about 26% higher than the engineer's estimate, that both bids were very high, were higher than the average in the controlling items of work which were related to drainage, and that subjects the agency to unforeseen conditions. If there were unforeseen conditions in the project, those controlling items of work of the project would be the ones that would drive the price of the contract should we need to increase those those items of work. So taking that into account and the fact that it is so high above our engineer's estimate, staff recommends to go ahead and reject all bids and to resolicit for the project. Having said that, I also must say that as you heard Mr. Halley Engineering did submit an affidavit to the committee objecting to staff's recommendation to disqualify them, as well as a separate correspondence which was also provided to this board, objecting again to the committee's recommendation or final actual decision to disqualify them. Lead Engineering as well submitted a correspondence urging the board to award the contract to their firm. That's what's before you today. Any
Ms.
questions?
Cordero, can I have a motion?
Move.
Second?
Second.
Okay, open for discussion.
Motion is to reject all bids and re-advertise the project.
Okay, did you want to speak?
Yes.
I know, but he-
Ultimately, I will support the motion, but I think that there are a couple of questions here. And what do we do with this contract? And then secondly, how did we get here, and does it indicate a problem with our approach on other contracts? And I start off with a presumption that if 4 out of 6 bidders have been deemed non-responsive, it has to do with the solicitation. And we have set up a situation where that would occur. And it appears that we had a very detailed qualification for the project manager with at least 12 bullet points of very specific information. It's probably quite a package to respond appropriately to that. And I would have a couple of questions about that, which are, have we used this language before? Is it common in our solicitations? Is there any particular reason why the project manager qualifications need to be in such detail? Normally, it's sufficient that a firm be pre-qualified to do a certain type of work. I've seen detailed information on personnel on $100 million projects, but not a $3 million mill and resurface project. That's a fairly simple job. So why did we have this requirement for detailed information on the project manager, and have we used this type of solicitation before?
Ms. Cordero?
I'll take part of that question, and the answer is, have we used this type of solicitation before in other projects? Absolutely. Why do we need that level of requirement for the PM? I'm going to have to defer to our engineers as they establish those requirements, those technical requirements.
Mr. Toledo?
Well, as far as the technical requirements, we get the minimum qualifications for a project manager similar to what DOT would request for a project manager. So the minimum we feel is a minimum that can be met. The reason we put them in the documents up front is to ensure that we're getting a qualified PM at the beginning of the project as opposed as the way it was written. We specifically took this document from the front-end document, from the spec language, and put it into the front-end document to avoid any issues of having a competent project managers with experience to oversee our projects. We had issues in the past where you would get and you would start a project and you would struggle to get a qualified PM or someone that knew what they were doing. So by putting this into the front-end document and getting it out as a prerequisite criteria, we avoid having to pull teeth to get to a notice to proceed and get a project going. We felt that right now we feel that the minimum requirements that we're using are in line with what the state is doing, and as Helen says, we've used it in the past, and this is one time that, or the only time that we've seen that we've had encountered this issue.
Madam Chair, have we used this in the past on similar sized contracts or only on major projects?
No, we have used it actually just recently in a MOT project. We did the same type of process. We did make a requirement of the project manager, and we did receive bids that were responsive.
And if I may, Mr. Secretary, I think we can't generalize that 4 didn't understand this of the process. Of the 3 that were found non-responsive, 2 did not even submit the qualifications for a project manager. They actually put it in Part 2, which is the price submittal, not in the pre-qualification. There was only 1, JVA Engineering, who put the project manager in the front, but couldn't demonstrate the number of years and the qualifications on a roadway construction project. They can demonstrate design work, but they couldn't demonstrate the roadway construction. So it's different. The issues were different. And then what we heard at the committee meeting was that somehow the way that the document was put together and they couldn't unstaple it and put it together somehow confused them, and they put the PM in the part 2, which is the price, not in the pre-qual part of it. That's what was heard at the committee meeting. So to generalize that there was 4, so it's a problem, there was 2 that didn't do it. Both of them have done work with MDX in the past. There was 1 that didn't meet the qualifications simply because they couldn't demonstrate it, and then Halley Contractors had a completely different issue. It had nothing to do with the package itself.
And yet we disqualified 4 out of 6 firms. That doesn't help us get a low bid. And if 4 out of 6 were confused by the process, it's probably what we put out. And I would hope that in re-advertising, we do something different to avoid that.
Ms. Cordero, is this very different from other bid packages we put out?
I don't believe so, Madam Chair. We will obviously take a look at our documents and make sure that if there is any misunderstanding, we can correct it, but we will take a look at the package, absolutely.
Are you comfortable with that?
Yes.
Mayor Jimenez?
I'm not. So, it's the Secretary of, District Secretary of Transportation is saying that, hey, why are we doing it this way? And yet the engineer is saying we're doing it the way that the Florida Department of Transportation does it. So I don't get that one, okay? So if you feel uncomfortable as to why we require all of this for a simple milling job, okay, and then they're saying that that's the way you do it, so is that the way you do it?
No, it is not.
Okay.
Let me rephrase. We use the same minimum qualification criteria in the front-end document. Yes, DOT does not require, on bids similar to the one that we just put out, DOT does not require to pre-qualify their project manager during the solicitation process. It's in their specs. So you put it on the project managers, your teams, to ensure that a qualified project manager is brought on to the project post-award. We've taken the initiative to say we're going to do that before we award the project to ensure that we have qualified personnel overseeing the construction jobs. As far as the qualification criteria, we use the same criteria that the state uses.
I have a question.
I still have the floor.
Wait.
So is that what happens at Florida DOT for a simple milling job?
We would have specifications that the contractor needs to meet, and we have CEI engineers that ensure that that be done. Putting it in the pre-qualification rather than making it a requirement that occurs during construction, we could find and reject the qualifications of a project manager if it's in our specifications, but we don't have to make it an issue of pre-qualification.
Right, wouldn't the firm be pre-qualified to do that kind of work?
The firm, but not necessarily project manager.
No, I agree. I think it's much simpler to say the firm is qualified to do that kind of work. I also find it interesting that firms that apparently had done work with us now didn't put it in the right envelope. It was envelope number 1 or envelope number 2. They put it in envelope number 2 instead of putting it in envelope number 1, and therefore they're gone. And I don't even know what the price is. And so we may have ended up with everybody that follows everything precisely and all the way we want it, but it could be, I kind of tend to think the way you do, Mr. Secretary, that somehow the way we word things may be confusing, because I would believe that some of these folks are pretty intelligent people and they can't even follow envelope number 1 and envelope number 2. So I think somehow we need to review how we put things out, to put it in plain English, all right, so the people, this is what you need to put in envelope number 1, this is what you need to put in envelope number 2. Now, I want to move on to the question of the cone of silence.
Well, Mr. Mayor, if I may respond to, if I may be heard on this issue before we move on to the next one?
Sure, go ahead.
Thank you. Staff, Mr. Rodriguez, how many RFPs have we put out in this price range relating to around $2.5 to $1.3 million? Hundreds, right? On how many of those have we had this situation where we've had 4 of 6 bidders found not responsive?
This was surprising to us.
is the language has been generally the same in all the bids?
We've looked at it, and one of the solutions, because again, this is about solutions, is that if we were to advertise again, we would ask for a pre-proposal meeting so that the contracting community can ask us all the questions that they want with all of the confusions or whatever.
Can I just answer that point? Because
Sure,
we do
please.
have a pre-bid meeting for one of our projects, and they have an opportunity to ask questions at the meeting, as well as question and answer period. And to the point that these contractors who have done business with us in the past, and now they can figure out what package 1 and B is, they had figured it out in the past and have submitted it correctly in the past.
And
The
one more-
same contractors.
And one more question, Mr. Rodriguez. Insofar as this RFP, as I know we have all of them, isn't it true that there's generally somebody, RFQ, I apologize, RFQ, isn't there generally somebody in staff that if there is a question that needs to be answered, they can contact to clarify?
In every procurement, there is always a staff person designated to answer questions. In this ITB, there's always a person to answer questions, not only to answer questions, but if they needed something and they needed to follow, for instance, I think the next subject that we're going to discuss, which is the cone of silence, there is a process spelled out in the ITB of how to do that and go through procurement. It's already spelled out.
So, I've been here for 8 years. This looks more like an outlier situation with these individuals that bid than a general problem with our system. And one of the things that we've been always very strong with here has always been to follow the rules. If we want to amend them, that's one thing. But this is clearly an outlier because in my experiences here, this is the largest amount of people that have been either violated the cone of silence or non-responsive in any one, whether it's a very large bid or a small one that we've ever had. So that's why I think we need to clarify that.
Thank you.
I just want to make sure that, that we're not involved in gotcha situations, okay, and throwing out, very qualified firms just for some simple thing that they may not have understood. It's an outlier, but it's an interesting outlier. And so with that, I think we need to look, okay, what actually happened here? Why didn't people understand what we were talking about or what we wrote? And so, it may be some introspective look at ourselves and how we do things. Maybe it doesn't happen all the time, but, I've actually heard people complain about the process here, okay, outside, all right, before I became a member, all right? And by the way, I've heard people complain about our process in the county, okay? So I'm not saying anything that I wouldn't say in Miami-Dade. We do some things that I would look at and just crash my head and go, oh, it's in the code, okay? And the commissioner, the vice chairwoman could probably do the same thing. Well, it's in the code, right? But we sometimes shoot ourselves in the foot, and so we need to, and this may be a more nimble organization, okay, than the county is. That's a huge organization to try to change the code.
So before I go on to
Yeah.
did you have more to say?
Yeah, I have the cone of silence that I want to talk about.
Okay.
You, okay? All right. Okay, thank you. What exactly was this cone of silence violation that supposedly happened? What did Halley Engineering, who did they contact that was supposed to not have been contacted by them?
They contacted one of the MDX representatives. This individual is a project manager for MDX through our general engineering consultant. In fact, he's actually the project manager on a project that Halley is currently under contract for with MDX. And they went directly to him and asked him for a reference on a previous project that Halley had already completed. The ITV.
What does that mean, a reference?
A reference for maybe a form that says that they were that they completed that project and that the project was between this date and that day for this amount of dollar amount, et cetera. Just kind of confirming that the fact that Halley was a contractor that completed that project.
So this is a subcontractor to Halley themselves?
This is no. This is a subcontractor to our general engineering consultant. So it's a project manager representing MDX on our projects. And Halley went to him to ask him for a reference to including our, in this bid package.
Is that generally known that individual does work for MDX?
He's, like I said, he's currently the project manager on a project that Halley's doing for MDX.
Is he our project manager or is he Halley's project manager?
Our project manager, MDX's project manager.
Okay, and that's spelled out in the code of silence?
It's spelled out in the code of silence that they should not contact MDX representatives related to this project or the process.
And so that person is deemed an MDX representative?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry.
Chair Edmondson.
I'm sorry.
I'm going in order.
But I had asked before.
She whispered in my ear.
I would appreciate that we also check the right side.
I did, honestly.
Okay.
Trust me, I would not over.
And if you do, I'll still speak.
Just to clarify, I
Don't worry
did
about
raise
it.
my finger before the mayor began to
Yeah,
speak.
no, I even did it for the mayor, because on 2 occasions, he asked to speak, and they didn't notice him,
You
but
wanna
that's
speak,
okay.
Marisa?
You have to speak up.
Go ahead.
You have to speak up when you want to, yeah. No, don't worry about it.
Okay, I
will wait my turn.
Okay,
Because I chaired the meeting, so I wanted to put some light into this conversation.
I appreciate that.
So that's all it was.
Be quick, real quick. But back to the process. Because yes, I'm one of the ones that would criticize sometimes the process in the county, as the mayor knows. But something he taught me, when you get down and you have the lowest bidder being 25% over the engineer's estimate, why didn't we just go and do a best and final offer?
Because you
That
have,
normally brings them way down. And then that way you save time and we can get the project done.
it wasn't contemplated in the ATV. The ATV says that we will go into award the contract to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder.
But now that we have, we're meeting up with something like this, why can't in the future, from here on out, we can do a best and final offer when we see things like this occurring? And that would save us a lot of time.
It's a very good suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You're welcome.
Miss, we're done?
done. I'm done.
I'm being really careful because I don't want to be beat up. Ms. Gutierrez, your turn.
Thank you so much. I want to follow up.
Apologize. You know, I would never overlook you.
Oh, no. Please don't worry about it.
Oh, I
Thank you.
do.
No, I just did it for the mayor's sake, because he kept waving and he didn't get it. But don't worry, because, he's very quiet. Yeah. He doesn't have the extra sauce. I do, so I always have the extra sauce, so don't worry. In this case, I wanted to follow up on the conversation that the vice chair has brought up. It is our prerogative to waive the decision and go and maybe negotiate, and they could lower the bid in that particular area, or we don't have that ability yet.
Ma'am,
at
it wasn't
this time.
contemplated in the ITV, and it would expose us to legal challenges.
Okay, so it's for sure no way in and no way out on it. Then I wanted to follow up on the ops meeting. Some of these bidders, the excuse that they used when they had time to address us was basically what gave them the hiccup and they messed up, was based on that they had to submit the bid identical, the form identical the way they got it, that they couldn't pull the pieces apart. This is what the excuse that they used, that this is why they missed on providing the information that we've so sought. Okay? So it's not necessarily anything that staff has done or the procurement has done. In essence, what they said that messed them up was that they had to resubmit the package the way they received it. Excuse me, in case that they didn't have stapler removers, I hope that MDX can afford the next time we go out, if we rebid this or we require that we give it to them, that we let them borrow it at least. Yeah, the stapler remover, because to use that excuse was pretty annoying. Anything else? I mean, that's what they said. So I understand how we're trying to figure out what happened, but this is what they said happened to them, and this is why they missed it. That's pretty sad. That's pretty lame. So I would be concerned that they would be working on remilling and resurfacing this road if they couldn't even do that.
That it, Ms. Gutierrez? That was a very good point. It was worth waiting for. Yes.
Secretary Wolf, the word they used was disassemble the proposal. So they read not to disassemble it. And I think that fooled by randomness, sometimes these things collect all together sometimes. But that was, two of the bidders mentioned that they had blocked the response by not being able to disassemble the bid.
Mr. Meyer, Mr. Walters.
So I have a few questions, and to that point, Board Member Board, disassemble, this is what I do very often. I may not ask the question for strategic purposes. I may be trying to work a system where I use that word without asking the question for full clarity so that I can manipulate that process to benefit me. And that's a risk you take. Additionally, and I mentioned this in the committee meeting, I've been in many situations, and even in my own business, where we've had folks that may be new to the company and may not be as familiar with the process as someone who previously was in submitting those documents, or we didn't have the time to truly do a thorough review. I do have a few questions and concerns. I wholeheartedly agree with Commissioner Edmondson's thought, and I think I don't see that it needs to be language within each ITB, but rather language at the discretion within our legal documents to allow us that opportunity. But obviously, we can look into that, because the two bidders that submitted, although they were 25 and 26.5% above our engineer's number or estimate, they were still fairly close. So we don't have the opportunity or the luxury at this point in time to see what the other four came in at, because they did submit numbers. And the other four could very well be over that number or within line. So we look at it now as, oh, we're missing out on $630,000. So I wanted to bring that to light. My question is, lead engineering contractors claimed in their document that I just read that they did their own analysis and they were within 2.1% of FDOT's unit pricing. In the HMTB statement, they said the engineer's estimate came from the statewide averages. So there's a disparity there, and I just wanted some clarity as to, I guess, who's right?
Mr. Toledo.
Lead engineering used, in their letter, they used 2016 numbers. They posted it in their spreadsheets. We went back to the estimates that we did prior to putting this out, and we still think that our engineer's estimate is reasonable. I think that when you look at I think what LEED's analysis doesn't do is that it tells you how their pricing compares to the DOT pricing per item. If you take it just on the full number and the way that they did their analysis, yeah, you're gonna be, you can make it to 2.1%, but in reality, when we did our engineer's estimate, when we did the bid analysis of the bids, we looked at every single item, and what we found and what we put in our memo is specific to Section 2 of our bid, which attributes to 50% of the work, which is the drainage component. And what we found there is that those drainage items, which are controlling items of work, represent disparities of 2 to 5 times the normal or the statewide averages. What does that do? Those are controlling items of work where MDX assumes all the risk. These are drainage pipes, heavy concrete pipes where you have to come in and dig anywhere between 2 to 5 foot wide trenches to whatever depth. Yes, we did the plans and we've mitigated we've mitigated as much as we can on paper, but you really don't know what you're gonna get until you dig. So anything that we find on that job that would cause for more quantities than what we have calculated in the plans, MDX is at risk for that, and we're paying 2 to 5 times the premium on these type of prices. They've also, what they don't show is the price, the item where they bid at a penny, and then they use the DOT pricing at the normal pricing. That throws off their bid analysis by $300,000. So yeah, they can bring it up to 2.9, but in reality, if you compare apples to apples, they would still be 15-20% from the statewide averages when you do that comparison wholeheartedly. What we're looking at is at the risk based on the huge disparity on those specific controlling items of work and the risk that puts the agency at if we were to award this contract. And not only for LEED, but we also did that for Weekly, and Weekly also had those same drainage items priced significantly higher than what we're used to seeing in bids. We're used to seeing maybe somewhere between 5, 10, maybe 15%, where we can look at market trends and say this is what's driving these prices. But when you're looking at prices that are, the disparity is 120% to 267%, then they're doing something with the bid. And that's something that I don't believe that the agency should go and take that risk.
So two things on that note. One is unforeseen conditions. There's nothing you can do. Owner takes that ability and responsibility in any circumstance. So I understand that. What was also interesting, 50% of the project cost is in Section 2, which is drainage. So both contractors, again, roughly were in the same grouping in terms of their overall bid in their estimate. Both of those contractors in Section 2 is where you saw that large variance of roughly 50% and 60% in the difference.
That's correct.
So just like we may be, or they may be seeing something that we don't see in the procurement documents, that could very well be that the industry is seeing something within those drawings. But I don't know, I haven't seen them nor done a review. The second item, what would be the delay overall in the groundbreaking if we decided to revisit this and rebid?
I think we discussed this with procurement. I think right now, assuming we don't make any significant changes to the bid package, we can put it out right away, and we can probably have a bid back in within 30 to 45 days. So you're looking at maybe a 2-month delay from groundbreaking to do this. It also gives us a chance to go out and follow our practice of doing the pre-proposal conference, addressing all the issues that came up during the solicitation, address any of these concerns that we brought up. Maybe there is something that we're missing. I mean, we did our research and our analysis of these bids. We don't see what could be driving these prices up, but we give an opportunity to the contractors to bring any concerns that we may not know about, and so that we can address it before the prices come in.
Sure, so you said 2 months. I think that's a lofty goal, personally.
We can bring back to this committee a recommendation forward in January.
Okay.
So that would put us at the end of January, so that's, yeah.
The action that we're asking.
Correct.
Hate to be. We can re-advertise by next week and, like I said, have a final recommendation, taking into account committee meeting dates and the fact that we're not going to have committee meetings to the end of November, and we can have something before you for the January meeting.
So, again, let's just take 4 months, because that was the question, the delay. What would be the associated internal cost for us for those 4 months? Administrative, legal cost, anything of that nature? Is it a couple thousand?
It's nowhere near $650,000.
Not that I thought it was, but, again, I'll save my last item to the end that I want to bring up with respect to that $630,000. The other was, if we rebid and re-advertise, if that's what the motion carries, do the other 4 submitters that were deemed non-compliant, if you will their numbers become public?
No.
See, as a private sector person, I see that as a significant and unfortunate competitive advantage if I'm one of those 2 that followed protocol, followed the process. If my numbers now are public, but the other 4 that did submit are not, there's a competitive advantage there, and I'm speaking from the private sector, being in their shoes. And lastly, again, I mentioned this in the committee meeting. What's the cost for 4 months to get this project up and going today, or waiting 4 months for safety measures? Is it worth the $630,000 to potentially save a life? That's my position. Thank you.
Mr. Meyer. Mr. Walters, you're next in line.
At the beginning of the meeting, the representative of LEED mentioned that a lot of time had been whacked off this project, and that caused its number to be what it was. Had you looked at that issue?
We did look at that issue, and that was something that we did during the solicitation process. We looked at the original calendar days proposed of 365 days, and we analyzed that against the actual plans and the way that the plans were put together. And those changes were made based on the way that the plans were. It wasn't because we wanted just to lop off and accelerate the project. The actual plans were designed and put together for a 240-day duration, and the estimate, the engineer's estimate also reflects that revised day. So it doesn't, in our estimation, it wouldn't have made a significant impact to the price.
Okay,
Or shouldn't
so the engineer's estimate was made with that calendar cut.
Correct.
Thank you, Mr. Walters. Going along my list, Mr. Martinez.
Thank you. Mr. Rodriguez, I have a question. You indicated that the bids would remain sealed, the ones that were not open because they were deemed not responsive, correct?
I believe that's what procurement has said, and legal has said they remain sealed.
However, if someone makes a FOIA request for those, would they not be, they would not be available either?
No, as long as the action taken today includes the re-advertisement, those bids are protected from sunshine.
For clarification, not only will those bids remain sealed, but the bids that were submitted that we're now talking about, lead and weekly, their bids are what would also be protected, meaning you couldn't make a public records request and then review and inspect their bid. It's protected.
Thank you, Mr. Leonard.
Thank you.
At this point, along those lines, at this point, the only thing that's public is the bottom line number of those bids. Their bid items amount that were not. Well, but
Ms.
they
Gutierrez.
don't have those original numbers either.
I have a two-tier question. First of all, I've heard the word safety being thrown around a couple of times by Member Myers, and I wanted staff to expand what safety component is really here that this may save a life or not save a life, because I think it's a sign. So maybe I'm missing something. So what safety component is he talking about? Because I've heard that word a couple of times. And then the second question, if we are to reject this bid and move forward, what are we going to do different regarding the cone of silence? Because I don't think consultants really know who is a representative, who is part of that circle that you really can't speak. And I think we need to put that burden on ourselves, and that burden should be that once this bid goes out, the same way that you inform us, there's a code of silence because there's a bid out, that all those that are under CEA, GCA, and GCB, and everybody there down the line need to know that there's a cone of silence. So goodbye, you can't speak to anybody. I think the burden needs to be on all of us at this time, because when do you really know who you're asking, you know, hey, he can't address or she can't address. So safety, and what are we going to do about the cone? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gutierrez.
I'll
I
address-
just want to make a question, because I kind of, Mayor Jimenez is talking. Could you please tell me how much above the general engineer's estimate we are on this bid?
26%.
26%. Have we ever gone 26% above a general engineer's estimate?
No, ma'am. We never awarded a contract that has gone above.
We've never gone 26% above.
26% above.
Thank you. Mayor, your turn.
Yes, I was concerned about some of the comments made. Are the roadway conditions any way, shape, or form unsafe in the Gratigny?
No, they're not. In fact, the engineer's estimate addressed that because it was, the comments were made at the committee meeting. The pavement is not in poor shape that will cause any kind of safety. It does need milling and resurfacing. The drainage needs upgrading. And as far as the safety component, what we did is when we presented the safety program, we wanted to test as a pilot the signs, the speed signs that illuminate and that have the electronic signs. We're going to put those speed signs out there. But at no time are we degrading or exasperating a safety condition.
Will the 4-month delay in any way, shape, or form create an unsafe condition on the Gratigny?
No, it will not.
Okay. Thank you.
Are there any other questions, discussions I may have overlooked? Call the question.
Would you like me to restate the motion?
Could you please restate the motion and take a roll call on this?
All right.
Thank you.
The motion before the board is to approve staff's recommendation to reject all bids and re-advertise this project.
Has it been moved?
It's been properly moved and seconded?
Yes,
And seconded,
it
rather?
has.
Okay.
Maria Luisa. Well, could we, if you want to reiterate who made the motion and seconded it for the record?
I'm sorry.
Mr. Martinez made the motion and Mr. Meyer seconded.
So it's on the record?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mayor Jimenez?
Yes.
Ms. Gutierrez? Mr. Martinez?
Yes.
Mr. Meyer?
No.
Mr. Walters?
Yes.
Mr. Treasurer Board?
Yes.
Secretary Wolf?
Yes.
Vice Chair Edmondson? Chair Fano? Motion passes.
Much.
Madam Chair, is there any way we can accelerate this thing? I mean, is that as fast as we can get it back in January? That's as fast as we can get back? Because I guess we're not meeting or something?
In November.
Well, we don't have a committee meeting until the end of November and a board meeting at the beginning of December, so it will be very close, but we can try.
Yeah.
Great if you could try hard.
Yes.
Point taken. Yeah.
Duly noted.
Okay.
Are we ready?
Long. I think, and I'd like to put this on record, I see this as an opportunity in several ways. Number one, for people to read the RSPs. And number two, to follow the process, because we're very much about process. And I understand, Vice Chair, sometimes you question the process, and that's a good thing too. But I see it as an opportunity, and I hope you will embrace it as well. Thank you. Moving
Item D.
along.
Item D, MDX procurement contract number RFP 11-02, MDX work program number 83629.020, design engineering services for State Road 836 interchange modifications at 87th Avenue with a contract amount of $330,812.12. It was approved by the committee on October 19th, and the motion before you is to approve the supplemental agreement number 6.
Second.
Mr. Toledo, you want to give a brief description? I know this was totally vetted in the committee meeting, but for the folks that may have not been there.
Board members, this is for the construction, for the design of the 87th Avenue and 836 interchange. This is to add, as far as the design the auxiliary lane, or an auxiliary lane from 87th Avenue to 107th Avenue to eliminate a bottleneck that will be there if we don't fix this now. It also ties in a small gap of the widening of the inside shoulder for the XT and express bus service initiatives that we've been undertaking. This is to supplement the existing design contract with the designer that's on board today that has all the institutional knowledge and all the background work to be able to get this done quickly.
Thank you. Any questions? Hearing none, seeing none, put it for vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you.
Item E, MDX procurement contract number RFP 0906, MDX work program number 92407.011, project development and environmental study services for State Road 924, east extension to I-95. The contract is for $31,218.45. It was approved by the committee. The motion before you is to approve the supplemental agreement number 8.
Move.
Motion. Second. Mr. Toledo, brief discussion, brief explanation.
Board members, this is for the 92407 East Extension to I-95, and this supplemental is to address a specific request from the Department of Transportation as it relates to Northwest 119th Street, having to do with a lane elimination study for reducing the lanes on 119th from 6 lanes to 4 lanes. Our proposed PD&E would provide a 4-lane elevated roadway, in essence, creating an extra lane along the corridor, but since Northwest 119th is a state road, we are required to perform this lane elimination study. This is a new requirement by the state that was brought on in 2014 after we started the PD&E.
Thank you, Mr. Toledo. Any questions, discussions? I'm going to get whiplash from looking back and forth. Hearing none, seeing none, call it for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimously. Thank you.
Item F, MDX work program number 83618, State Road 836, Southwest Extension. The contract amount is $781,500. It was endorsed by the committee. And the motion before this board is to approve the staff making an initial offer for parcel 100, again, in the amount of $781 and $700.
Toledo? Thank you. We've got a
Pretty straight.
motion and a second. Pretty straightforward.
Pretty straightforward. We're asking the committee, the board, for approval to acquire a parcel that has a willing seller, and regardless of what alignment is selected for the 836 extension, this parcel is impacted. We want to make an initial offer at this price.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Unanimous. Like those.
Item G, MDX Work Program, number 92404, State Road 8, I'm sorry, I keep, what's with the 8? 924 Extension West to the Heft. This is for an advance acquisition of property in the amount of $924,500.
Second.
In favor?
Aye.
Forward.
Pretty straight. Any opposed?
The agenda.
Also passed. Thank you very much. That completes the items on the agenda. Informational items.
Madam Chair, before the informational items are before you, we had some questions at the committee meeting, and I think we addressed Mr. Walter's questions, I believe. I was led to believe. But before you make your comments, I think on the issue and the procurement, one thing I failed to mention, as we've done in the past, I will reach out to the contractors and to the vendors, and I will discuss with them how we can improve our process. We've done that in the past. We will continue that practice. If there's anything that we can do to make it clearer or better, we will implement it. So I forgot to say that before, and that's customary for.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to give you my chair's comments for today. I'm going to try and make them brief, but I believe they're very important. Fellow board members, I know we've all been through a lot in the last month, and I truly want to take this opportunity to recognize and thank the MDX staff for their hard work in preparing and recovering from Hurricane Irma. I know the uncertainty we all felt. I felt it, and I'm sure you all did as well, as the storm approached. It has been stressful, and the recovery effort has been continues, and it's been incredible. Thank you very much. I'd also like to take this opportunity to commend Governor Scott, Secretary Wolf, and Mayor Jimenez for their leadership, their outstanding leadership before, during, and after the storm. I know I speak on behalf of the staff, the board, and the many others who appreciate your tireless efforts. And we also recognize and also appreciate that you ensure the safety and the well-being of everyone in our community and beyond. I would like to ask you to please join me in a standing ovation for these. With that, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn, please.
Move.
Second? Thank you. See you all in December.